I'm Roger Kochbar, and this is segment 7 for week 7, segment 2 within week 7. So before going forward talking about extracellular waveforms, I wanted to talk a little bit about what this is all about in a general sort of way. Of course, humans are very skilled and very effective at watching and then seeing what's happening and in the future taking actions based on what they see. So in our picture for today, we see this guy. He's very carefully watching his mom take this picture, saying, "What are you doing, Mom?" And he'll make use of that knowledge at some time as days come and go to his own benefit. With respect to the electricity subject, we're talking about watching extracellular waveforms. What are we talking about exactly? Well, practically always we're talking about the following. We have all of our measurement electrodes outside of cells, no electrodes inside of cells. In many cases, the electrodes are close by the active tissue, but in many other cases, they're far away, possibly out on the skin, say even out on the arms and legs. Then what people are doing is they're observing the voltages in between these electrodes. And they observe that voltages change as time goes by. Often they're changing rather rapidly, so they have marked changes in a millisecond, or sometimes even less than a millisecond. Then people watch systematically. They try to make some sense of whatever it is that is seen. That can be fairly easy if you can say, well, this is about the same timing as some other observation, or it can be very subtle and difficult and require a lot of patience. It is, in a sense, like managers of professional sports teams. They watch the other team very carefully. And over a period of time, watching particular players, they gain a sense of just what a certain motion means. That's how extracellular waveforms are. They're very informative. And people watch them very carefully over time to see what they mean. Perhaps the most famous historical figure in watching bioelectric waveforms is Augustus Waller. He was a physician and a physiologist. He lived in the late 1800s. I think he did his work in England. Augustus was a very smart person. He was the son of another famous physiologist and physician. Augustus became interested in electrical waveforms, and so that he would have a subject from whom to measure these waveforms, a patient subject, he trained his bulldog, Jimmy, to stand in 4 buckets of water. The 4 buckets of water were needed because this gave good contact with each of Jimmy's 4 limbs. Augustus used a device called a capillary electrometer, which by modern day standards is a rather poor voltage measurement device, but that was what he had and he used it. And he measured voltages as a function of time in between the buckets with Jimmy standing in them. And the signals that he saw, he observed carefully and found that they were periodic. And not only that, but the signal with the major deflection corresponded to the heartbeat of the dog. So he concluded quite correctly that the biggest signal he was seeing was the electrical signal being originated in Jimmy's heart. Of course, Augustus learned a lot of other things about the heart and about Jimmy. He was a very smart guy. So I wanted to ask you the following question. This is not a missing slide. This is a question for you as a student. I would like to have a picture here of Jimmy and Augustus. Should be Augustus. Can you find us one? Now, there are, I know, a number of pictures because I remember seeing them at one time and another. And I was looking around for one and putting it to put on the slide, and I didn't see one immediately. But then I thought to myself, why not ask you? You can look around the internet, see if you can find us one, and post the link. Ideally, we'd like to have one with Jimmy standing in the buckets of water, but at least we'd like to have one of Augustus and Jimmy, who is probably the most famous subject in all of bioelectricity. The Duke dormitories have carved into the side faces, and these faces watch students and others as they come and go through the doorway. They're really carefully and elegantly done by some sculptors who were very highly experienced and thoughtful people themselves. Here's an example of this sculpture, of this sculptured figure watching us. As we go forward in this segment, or in this week's lectures, we will look carefully at some examples of waveforms and see what we can make out of them. Thank you for watching. See you in the next segment.